Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm Bree, and if you're new here, hi and welcome. So I am so excited to share with you today my completed bathroom remodel. This is what it looked like when we moved in. There's pink floral wallpaper, a green shell sink, a really dark vanity, and then this is what it looked like 3 weeks ago. Honestly, it doesn't really look too bad from this video, but paint is hiding a multitude of sins. The bathroom had wood flooring with gaps in the seams which collected dirt. The light fixture is really awkward. It's too close to the wall and I couldn't really put any other type of fixture on there. The vanity itself was just covered in layers of paint. It wasn't done correctly from the beginning, so it's always peeling off. The only thing I really loved about this bathroom is the salvaged granite countertop that I actually got for $50. It's gorgeous and it hides so much dirt and toothpaste. But the most embarrassing part about the bathroom is the tub. You can see the caulking has cracked. I've tried to fix it half a dozen times. And having a window in the shower area has always been a little awkward. We just didn't really know what to do with it, and we always thought we would fix it when we remodeled. Well, now that time has finally come. Our outlets were dingy and cream, so we decided to update them with fresh white ones. There was actually a shortage in one of the outlets, and it turned into a half-a-day project. We were off to a very non-electrifying start. Early in the week, I got a fantastic deal on a scratch and dent vanity, which saved me $2,000, so I was very happy to say goodbye to the old one. My dad and I spent the whole day demoing the bathroom. I carried out so many trash cans of debris to the trailer. We took out everything, the vanity, the toilet, the tub, the flooring, and while tearing out the walls in the shower, we found a newspaper from 1947, which was stuffing a hole. The house was completed in 1948, so it was so cool to find a piece of preserved history in our walls. That was the disturbing sound of my dad sledging up our cast iron tub so that we could carry it out into pieces. I couldn't wait to see the kids' reaction when they got home from school. The next day while I was out shopping for some tile, my dad put in a new shower frame, and he also put in a new air vent. We didn't have one in there before. And then we went ahead and closed off the window and framed that in. That window didn't let in much light anyway, so we felt like that was our best option. Next, it was time to set the tub. It was so exciting to finally see some pieces coming back in. After letting that dry for 24 hours, we were ready to install the shower walls. As much as I love the look of tile, for our family of 6, I love the idea of a caulkless shower insert. This one was by Sterling. It'll just make it so much easier to maintain and keep clean. I also ordered some shower doors, that way I don't have to worry about water problems in our bathroom with kids splashing around. Now the shower is set, my dad handed the reins over to me. He promised he was only a phone call away if I needed him. I went ahead and patched all the walls with joint compound and just got a fresh start. Next, I got the floors and the threshold ready. I special ordered a 6-inch Turkish Carrara marble threshold to use as a transition. I can't wait to put that in. I love how it's the main entertainment before church. I was trying to use every spare moment to get this project done. The proper way to lay flooring is to have it underneath of the door jamb, so I laid down my underlayment, a piece of cardboard to sub as glue, and tile to get the measurement so I knew how much to cut off. This made me so nervous because this is a one-shot deal. After church, we went ahead and prepared the underlayment. I used Wonderboard, which is great for small tiles that we can lay flat. I cut everything out like a puzzle and laid it together to make sure it would fit. This was my very first tile project. I did tons of research. I actually loved Home Depot's tutorial videos on YouTube, so if you haven't done this before, you should check it out there. Next, I mixed up some thin-set mortar. This is just going to be able to smooth it all out, and that way we'll get a nice finish for our tile. It was really nice to have 2 sets of hands on this project, especially since it is a little time sensitive with mortar drying. Once we got it all down, we screwed it down and then patched the cracks with the extra mortar just to make sure everything was nice and smooth and the tile would lay flat. I put in 12 hours that day just in time to be able to see the sunset and watch the kids jump on the trampoline before bed. Next in queue was the shower tile. I laid it all out and measured like a million times and prepared all the cuts. Figuring out the spacing on this tile was actually the hardest part of the whole project for me. I measured all my cuts and I labeled every single piece, that way it wouldn't get mixed up. Then I marked everything with pencil lines and then reinforced it with a crayon because I knew that the wet tile saw would just wash off the pencil marks. Operating the table saw was actually really fun, so I didn't have to worry about a kickback like you would with a table saw, and you could go really slow and just get super accurate cuts without the tile chipping. After spending so many hours measuring and preparing, it was so fun to finally be able to cut it and get it done. When it was time to install the tile, I knew that the mortar would cover up my measurements, so I pulled out my laser level and it worked out perfectly. That way I could make sure everything was straight as I went. Since my grout was going to be white, I went ahead and used a white mortar too. I spread it on with a 3/16 inch trowel, and then after I pushed it on, I actually pulled off a sheet just to make sure it made contact with the mortar so it would stick on well. And then I just made sure and kept the cracks cleaned as I went. Then between each sheet, I put a spacer that was the same width as my tile. It's great that this mortar is a slow dry time, that way you can kind of shift it around and kind of mess with it and make sure it's nice and straight. If you're enjoying this, I would love it if you could give it a like and maybe even consider subscribing. I would absolutely love to have you here. As I went on, I found out it was easier just to throw all the mortar up there with a 1/4 inch little smaller trowel and then smooth it out with a 3/16. It just made everything go a lot faster. After spending all that time doing the prep work, it was so fun to be able to put it up so quickly, and it was actually like creating art. I really enjoyed it. To finish off the sides, I decided to go with a tile edger because it was just really small. It was like a 5/16, and it worked out perfectly. And I just put it on with mortar and tile and it stayed right in place. If I were to give you any advice, I would say don't start with a vertical tile. I feel like it was so finicky and it was really hard for a first-time project, but I did it. And I'm really happy with the way it turned out. While that was drying, the girls and I took a sneak peek at the tile and we laid out a few sheets to see what it looked like. But first I need to install that marble threshold. So I was inspired by older historic homes I've seen that have these marble thresholds, and I feel like it adds so much elegance. I waited until I actually had a threshold before I made my final cuts on my door jambs just to make sure they were accurate. As you can see here, the previous owners just cut the flooring around the door jambs instead. I did have to remove some of that underlayment that I put down just to be able to make it fit. I was a little nervous to cut it because it was a special order piece, but it cut so smoothly on the tile saw and there was no chips or cracks. This piece was so heavy, so it's nice to have Adam help me hold it. I used all-purpose construction adhesive to glue the plywood down and then also the marble. Before I put the marble in, I smoothed the glue out, that way it wouldn't push up whenever I slid the marble in. It was a super tight fit, but at least I don't have to worry about it going anywhere. And look how pretty she is. All my dreams are coming true. Speaking of dreams, this tile is stunning. I am so happy with the way it looks. Just like before, I measured it and dry fit it before I installed it. And since all the walls are crooked, I used the tub as my point of reference. I cut straight edges on those sheets and laid them flat against the tub, and then I just kept going from there. It poured down rain all day, so this is how I made my cuts. Good thing it's a wet saw. Around the toilet, I couldn't get this angled cut, so I did have to use some tile nips. They were a little hard to control, but they got the job done. Now that we're down to one bathroom, I'm pushing so hard to get this bathroom finished. The rain didn't hold me back. I mixed my mortar in the garage. I'm getting a lot better at mixing mortar now. I don't have to stand on top of my bucket anymore. So to keep my pieces straight, I just pulled back one row at a time and installed it that way. This went pretty quick. It took me about an hour and a half, and I know this because I put Beauty and the Beast on for my kids to watch and I listened to it the entire time. Once again, I really enjoyed this process. Putting the tile down is so fun and it's really satisfying. And being that it came in these sheets, it just made it really easy to lay down. And unlike the vertical tile, there was a little bit more wiggle room with this one. I kind of wish I had started with this one first. Now I just have to wait for 24 hours to let it dry before I can walk on it. So by the next evening, I was able to start grouting the shower. This is a little more tedious because it was time sensitive with the drying time. So what I did is I made it a little bit thinner than I would have the mortar, pushed it into the cracks really well. For the areas I couldn't reach with the rubber trowel, I just kind of lightly tucked in with a smaller trowel. This was a sanded grout, so I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to scratch the surface too much. Once that dried for about 20 minutes, then you started to make passes with a wet sponge very lightly and just taking it off coats a little at a time to make sure you're not rubbing it out of the seams. I kept washing my sponge over and over again until there was nothing left but a little haze. You can buy a dehazer then, but I used just a dry terry cloth towel and just rubbed it off and it came off, but it was actually kind of hard work, so I called in some reinforcement. I used more grout than what I thought I would, so before I did the floor I went and got an extra bag just to be safe, so I headed back to Menards yet again. Grouting the floor was a lot simpler than grouting the shower. It went really quick and it made such a difference. The grout color I chose was just a light gray. I was hoping that it wouldn't show much dirt. Also, it is supposed to be stain resistant, and to double that, I also bought a stain blocker and mixed it in with the grout. Being that this is our main bathroom, I wanted to be as proactive as I could, thinking ahead of future problems, so hopefully that'll really help. And for safety purposes, I picked out a matte finish tile, and I was really afraid that the grout was going to stick to it and not come off, but it came off no problem. Next, I wanted to move the light fixture. I've never done this before, but leaving it where it was not an option for me. So I did my research and talked to my dad and came up with a plan. The drywall is attached to plaster and it's really thick, so I had to get a really deep work box so that way it can sit in and then attach it to a stud. I decided where I wanted it based on the mirror height and then also centered it over the faucet and also down where the existing wire was, that way I could just put it directly down through the wall. I turned off electricity just in case there were wires back there, but I didn't think there was going to be. But when I opened it up, you'll never believe what I found. So what are the chances that that's actually the same wire that's connected to the light switch? I took off the old fixture and then shook the wire to see if it was, and look at that. I pulled down as much as I could, getting me enough excess to be able to work with. Not only was I lucky enough to have the right wire in the right place, but there was also a piece of wood in the back that was solid enough to be able to screw my workbox onto, making it nice and solid. To fix the ceiling, I screwed a board behind the drywall, then I put the piece that I had cut out and then taped it and mudded it, and then tried to match the pattern on the ceiling. Drum roll, please! Now it's time for the trim work, so back to Menards for the 5th time. They have the best selection of primed solid wood trim. To get it to fit in my van, I used this self-service saw, which cracked me up because it came complete with earmuffs and eye protection. Just cut at your own risk. After all the rain, it was so nice to feel the sun, and in the backyard my flowers had started blooming. They were such a welcome sight. First, I started with the base because I knew that was a little bit easier. I've never laid trim before, so I tried coping for the first time. It was a little challenging for me and wasn't perfect, but passable. It was going to be behind the vanity anyways. Then I found it was better for me to write down every measurement before I walked outside because I could get distracted along the way. I did lots of research and they said make sure you cut very slowly, that way it doesn't chip, and for base molding you want to hold it vertical when you cut it. Before I nailed it down, I did myself a favor and measured all the studs and marked it on the wall so I knew exactly where to shoot my brad nails. Then when you're cutting the crown molding, hold it the way that it will be installed on the wall, again cutting slowly. And remember how my dad said he was just a call away? Well, apparently this was the one call I needed because the angles on the crown molding gave me so many problems and I just couldn't get it. So my dad dropped by real quick and helped and rescued me. Now it's my favorite part, the finishing touches. I filled all the nail holes and then all this needed caulked. So I used white non-paintable caulk here on the shower, finishing it all off. I'm a huge audiobook buff, and now that I don't have to use my brain, I was able to start listening to my books again. This makes working so much more enjoyable. I actually listened to 11 books by the time the bathroom was finished. Look at what a difference this makes. For the caulking around the molding, I used a paintable one, that way it'll blend right in. I wanted to start painting in the morning, but I hadn't finalized my paint choice yet, so I called in my design assistants. They've been watching home improvement shows with me since they were babies, and now they have great opinions to share.
All of these are kind of like a blue kind of color. How about these? How about this one? I mean, it's a really good color, but it's not the color we look.
They actually have really good taste, and my son even picked the color that I wanted. I ended up getting 3 samples and then deciding on one. So I decided to try something new and paint the whole room, trim and the walls the same color. The color is called Classic Gray, and I was really hoping it was going to dry a little darker, but it looks so cream. But there wasn't anything I could do about that night because my dad was coming first thing in the morning to help me install the vanity in the toilet. What do you think of this color? Comment below if you think I should repaint or just commit to the Classic Gray. Stay tuned to the second half of this remodel where I put in all the pretty things and I reveal the final transformation. In the meantime, feel free to click around and check out some of my other videos while I sit here and contemplate my life's choices. And I will see you soon.